What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Off the Couch Boxing. I'm your host, Reckless Rex Ruger. That is my sidekick back there, El Flaco Explosivo, a.k.a. the Alexis Arguello Puppet. We're back with another banger, man. Our guest is already here. We're diving in immediately and chopping it up. Let's go. Little different take today. Going a little different route today. And where is he? What's up, my man?
Hey, what's going on? How you doing?
Hey, man, first of all, man, I really appreciate you doing this on short notice, man. It's really nice to meet you, man. I've seen a lot of your videos and stuff circulating around. Very intrigued by the art that you do.
Uh-huh. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I appreciate the stage.
Yeah, I think, and I'm actually hoping that fighters do see this because I'm convinced, having 52 blocks pop up on my radar a couple of years ago, and just kind of not knowing a lot about it, but the more I perused what it was all about and saw you demonstrating some of the moves, I started to realize now when I watch boxing, I swear I see guys infusing this into their style.
Well, it's I think a lot of the origin stories have been mixed people up because you hear a lot about 52 blocks.
Right.
It's immediately associated with jailhouse fighting, and I just think that's a selling point because a lot of people all for some reason want to know what's happening in jail.
Go get yourself arrested then.
Yeah, you can find out like that real
You
fast.
can find out. It's not hard.
It's not hard.
So I don't think you want to be learning. I don't think you want to be learning 52 blocks though inside the jail walls.
Though. No, I don't think that's the testing ground you want to do it on there. That's a rough testing ground.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And so let me ask you first, though, how did you get into this art? Who introduced it to you? If you can go into a little of your history, because I'm assuming, and I don't know this for sure, you didn't learn this in jail, did you?
No, okay. Definitely.
That's good.
good one. Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. When I grew up, that's fist fighting was everything. Way before back when I grew up, it's probably like one person in the neighborhood had a gun and they only had 2 bullets. It was guns weren't prevalent. It was your hands, right. and that's where 52 blocks. When I was in Queens and Brooklyn have been known to be more heavy with it. Brooklyn really, but a lot of the brothers that I seen fought that way, and I'm like, what it? I was always a martial artist, so I kind of like, what is this? And my cousins, they started showing me some of the things, and I carried it with me into when I went to Manhattan. And then when I met my head teacher, it was my head teacher that was able to help me make the connections to where the origins of 52 came from. And they came from boxing. They came from when they let black boxers start competing. And one of the things black boxers brought in was this heavy use of defense. And one thing I like about boxing is that every race of man can show their skill in boxing.
Yeah.
From Mexican to black to white. Now we got Ukraine. Like we got a whole boxing is
it's global.
Melting pot. Yeah. And because of that, it's so big. Like you got different variations of the same thing. What is boxing? 6 punches. It's not really a big art, like a Tai Chi that has 300 moves, but it's so simple that you come through. Like, you'll see boxing, but Tyson fights differently with his boxing than a Mayweather. So you start seeing who they are come through in it. And one thing that black boxers kind of always signify was this use of defense. We can see that all the way today with Mayweather being one of the most prominent people you can look at today. But if you go back in the days, you look at Archie Moore, he was doing what he called the armadillo.
Yep. And so when you say, you learn it from a teacher, obviously, like, this isn't something that, you could find schools all over the place for, this is kind of like a niche. This is kind of like a niche art where you really got to go looking for it. So how do you stumble across the guy that teaches you?
Well, like I said, when I was coming up, it was everywhere. Like 52 wasn't on his deathbed. Like, I think one of the things I'll pat myself on the back about is resuscitating 52.
No doubt. Yeah.
And it was on its way out. Like it was almost like a myth type of thing. And like I said, but when I came up, that's just the way they fought, everybody. But one thing I can say is it was kind of like a knack master thing. It wasn't like you
Right.
know, like the teaching you would see if you went to a boxing teacher.
Right.
I think that's something else I've done too, was to make it more system based.
And now, what about people who are like, who are skeptical? And there's certainly lots of them out there. You know what I mean? Like we see, like Steven Seagal, for instance, is a guy who takes a lot of shit now. Where we see him, his art Aikido getting poo-pooed for its effectiveness on the streets. You know what I mean? Like, so if someone were to come up and say, is this just another art that's a bunch of mumbo jumbo, or is this really effective? You know what I mean? Like in the ring, or even worse, on the street.
Definitely, I would go out on the limb and say 52 blocks, because of his underline, is a very important art, because it's true. Underline is to master your defense.
Right.
Ducking, slipping, clever footwork, feints. Like 52 blocks has more hand feints than it does blocks, really.
Yeah.
It's a very deceptive art. So it's like, have we seen defense work before? I have.
Oh, sure.
So if you don't believe defense works, it's like, I don't know how many fights you will watch.
And I think a lot of people, especially when it comes to a street fight, I don't think they think defense. I think most people tend to think, I want to get this over with quick. I'm going to throw my best shit, my hardest shit, and I'm going to try to end this fast. And nobody's really thinking about the fact that, hey, some shit's going to be coming back at me too,
Exactly. As my teacher used to tell me, you can't swim without getting wet.
Right.
And I tell people, most people fight from a narcissistic place.
Absolutely.
Like an offense is kind of narcissistic.
Yeah.
When you look at defense is self-preservation.
Right.
So most people fight from a narcissistic point to where I'm going to win. I'm going to unload my big punch and he's going to fall down until it doesn't happen.
And then what about the name of the art? Like you said, it's got a couple other terms. I've seen Jailhouse Rock. I've seen Dirty Boxing or whatever. 52 blocks kind of sends off. Certainly gives a connotation that it's defensive. But do people tend to think I'm just going to be learning a lot of blocks here and not any strikes?
No, it's like a lot of it goes more like, it goes deep into past the blocks to being more like a footwork thing, clever footwork, crafty thinking, learning how to set up traps, that type of thing. So it's made to fit your offense, So if you were a kicker, you could still learn 52 blocks. There's no set offense for 52, because it's pretty much like, how do you train your shield? You train your sword, but do you train your shield? And then you look at like the Spartan warriors who slept in there and had sex on their shields.
Right.
You can see the power of a shield. Yeah. So
And now is this an art, better suited for certain people of a certain build or a certain body type, or is this pretty universal? This would, this would be effective for anybody.
Self-preservation is universal. Like I tell people all the time, and I seen they was doing a study on this, that offense is the most unnatural thing we can do. Yeah, it's the most unnatural thing. The kicking, the punching, like our fists weren't made to punch each other in the face. We decided to do that. Right. And fists have been evolving, but defense is always there. Even if I tried to hit you, you would do something. It may not be as
a natural response.
Yeah, it will be a natural response. So I believe that training people in 52 is easier than teaching them how to throw a left hook, a real one. And so I believe defense fits everybody. It's just like, certain offense, like would you teach a midget how to kick?
Right.
Probably not. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like
maybe for a laugh.
Exactly. So there are most offenses are made for a certain type of body type. Defense is made for everybody.
And now, what about the origins of this art? You know what I mean? Like, obviously, like you teaching it, like you must be able to trace its lineage. Like, obviously, with karate, kung fu, like we know this goes back to ancient times. You know what I mean? Over in Asia or whatever. Like, where do you trace the origins or the first use of 52 blocks? Is it documented or known anywhere?
I would say boxing, but it wasn't known. The name 52 blocks came from the 5% Nation, who decided to attach themselves to the fighting style to give them credibility. All of the 5%ers I grew up with all used 52 as a fighting system. So I think they used their name, just happened to be the name that everybody remembered. 52 blocks, and it was 5 plus 2 is 7. 7 is the God number, and it goes into their thing. So they actually created the name that everybody kind of, I guess, everybody likes. Like it's the one that, like, Bum Rush and Jailhouse Rock didn't really roll off the tongue too well.
And now, what about as far as like teaching it to people or demonstrating it and getting feedback? Have your students or even like professional boxers, have they sought you out, or have they has anybody come and tapped you for more information on this? And have you gotten feedback on its effectiveness?
Oh yeah, definitely. I've spent the last 20 years proving this effectiveness. I've sparred with Rolly Rolando. I've been in Mayweather gyms. My MMA fighters pro. My boxing fighters won Golden Gloves in the Masters, and so I think when I started, that was kind of the first way to prove it, was let me get some students and show that this works.
Yeah,
and I did that, and like right now I'm in the UK to do a seminar out here. So
awesome.
People have definitely reached out to learn more about it.
And they're starting to realize that the UK too is really rabid about their boxing and their
they love to punch each other in the face. They love to punch each other in the face. It's still pretty big out here.
And so is there any boxers that you can think of, like past or present, who you feel like even if they didn't actually take lessons or cop to the fact that they were using 52 blocks, have you seen an example of any boxers who you watch, who you say, wow, I see a lot of traits of 52 blocks, like whether or not this guy knows he's doing it or not,
Yes, of course. Jack Johnson, Archie Moore, Joe Gans, George Dixon, Pernell Whitaker, Mayweather. And if you want to see it in a fight, Zab Judah did it against Mayweather in the 5th round.
I was going to refer to that fight.
He went right into it. Went right into it. So, and he's from Brooklyn. So, like I said, a lot of Brooklyn guys are up on it. Mike Tyson spoke on it, how much of a lethal art it was, and stuff like that. So, I think the proof is out there as far as if you look, but it's like most people hear 52 and they hear the jail thing and they they see it as this like its own style. Like most people don't believe defense is a real thing. That's what I've come to learn to understand is that.
But yet we've seen a guy like Floyd Mayweather, and you mentioned Sweet Pea. Like these are guys who pretty much built a successful career on defense.
Yes, big time. Big time. And most of, like, as my teacher used to say, he says, offense wins fights, defense wins championships.
Yeah. I believe that. I believe that. Yeah, I believe. And like, even with Floyd, he kind of had like two parts of his career. When he was Pretty Boy, he was still getting knockouts. But when he went into the second part of his career, into the Money Mayweather phase, if you will, he was a lot more defensive minded. Yes. But you can also argue that's where he had most of his success.
Yes. And then you tack on the hand problems, and you look at someone like Shakur Stevenson, who's going through the same thing and happens to be a hellified defensive fighter. Like, hellified. Like, his thing is range. Like, see, there's so many. I think people don't really see how deep defense is. There's so many levels to it. It's the footwork, it's body movement, head movement, understanding of range. Like, it encompasses so much that when built up, to me, your offense gets better. Like, when you build up your defense, you start to learn when you can start seeing the window for the counter striking. And I think, like I said, most people, places, and I've been to a lot of boxing gyms, defense is just overlooked. Like, it's sad. Like, it's sad. It's like, it's almost like they want you just to stand in front of each other and pummel each other.
I mean, but when you bring up the word like defense, and it's come up quite often so far in the first couple minutes of this interview, can you reassure people who might be hearing defense a lot, start to think, okay, well, if I'm confronted on the street, the defensive part, protecting myself, is fine, but eventually I have to get off though and be aggressive too. So for people that might want to say, geez, this sounds too defensive minded, how do I win the fight? Is there offense involved?
Yeah. Oh, well, like, because of the a lot of the blocks are elbow led. They become into elbow strikes in the close range. Yeah, they become elbow strikes. And And then I would say, pair a offense to it. Like that's what you would do, is like you would pair, whether it be kicking, wrestling, or punching, with your 52. So now that you do have an offense, but even I think the street fighting thing is always a funny thing, because I think just the fear of it puts these stories in people's head, because sometimes you don't have to fight, you need to run.
Yeah.
Defense helps with that.
Yeah. That's good advice.
Once you engage in the fight, you're in it. You're in.
Yeah.
You're in. Like I had a kid come to me that challenged me, and when I decided to spar with him, when he threw the first 6 punches and he seen how easily they was deflected, I can already see him start doubting himself. Like the power of defense is big.
Yes.
Like you can show, like, offense shows no mercy. Like if you wanted to fight me on the street and you threw a punch at me and I hit you with the right hand, you fell, cracked your cranium, that's it. But if you wanted to fight me and I gave you the ability to throw punches and show you that, the defense is so strong that you can't get in, that starts to unravel the mind.
It's disheartening, sure.
It's very disheartening. So a lot of the times, as I said, defense allows you to show mercy. Like not everything is a kill factor, but I hear so much street stuff like you got to get the fight over. It's like, like I've had a lot of street fights, and most of the time, most street fights are people Rarely is there ever anybody just walking up on you. So where's this kill factor at? Because I fought a lot of my friends, I couldn't kill them. I could only fight them.
Right. Now, what's the biggest misconception with 52 blocks that you find? Like, obviously, I brought a couple up. Maybe people doubting its effectiveness or whatever. But like when you're teaching these people,
the jail thing.
It's the jail thing.
Yeah. Like what happens is a lot of the practitioners were black men, and we know that black men make up a large part of the jail system. That's why 52 went to jail, because black men went to jail. Like I tell people, if you're a chef in the world and you go to jail, guess what you are? You're a chef in jail.
You're the cook. Yeah.
You're the cook.
You sure are.
So same thing with fighters. Like now, did certain people alter their thing when they were in jail, maybe because they were there for a long time? I believe that was possible.
Yeah.
But the origins go to Jack Johnson and George Gans and Joe Gans, who's credited with creating the jab. And that's where the origins of this goes to, is that what did black men bring into boxing? Defense.
Yeah.
We brought in the flip side.
And now, who are some? I don't know how much you keep up with the sport. Like this is, pretty much. I've done 173 episodes of this podcast, man. Pretty much, it's all been boxing or whatever, man. So I really can't speak too much to the MMA world, but I can certainly ask you, if you're a combat sports fan, are there boxers right now that you currently enjoy watching? Like who fights where a Lyte Burly would say, you know what, I got to watch this guy. I'm tuning in tonight.
Well, if it's boxers, I'll definitely say the Shakur Stevenson. I got Keyshawn, the businessman. Davis.
I've had him on. Great guy.
Yeah. Oh, you had Keyshawn on?
I've had Keyshawn on, and I'm actually talking to his guy right now who sets up his interviews, because now he's, since he won the WBO belt a couple weeks back, he's in much higher demand. And I think like now he's being, it's just a waiting game. Like he's got a great kid who works with him, who sets up all this like stuff for him or whatever. But he's obviously got a lot of people coming at him from a lot of different directions, because he's calling out the right. He just won a belt. He's calling out Tank. He's calling out Tio. He's calling out the right people or whatever. So he's making a name for himself. But I'm super glad. Yeah, I've had him on, and you're a New York guy, right?
Yes.
I've had Shushu on.
Okay, yeah.
Great guy.
Shushu, great guy. Great guy. Yeah, Keyshawn, businessman, is the truth. I seen it. Yeah. Just like I seen it with Mason. I think Mason is another one.
Yeah.
Going to jump on the radar real soon. Yeah. Of course, Terrence Crawford. I was an Errol Spence fan too. Still is an Errol Spence. I just hope he returns. And when you go into MMA, you have brothers like Yoel Romero. Used 52 against Israel even brought it up. He said he's going to try to use that 52 thing against me. And so, you have, but he comes from a Cuban boxing background, and Cuban boxing is heavy on defense. So I could understand where that came from.
But it's funny that you brought up Shakur, though, because I found on here, man, that a lot of times, people in the comment section after his fights, a lot of times will bag on those, sometimes You know, I think it's more casual boxing fans. They don't appreciate the high level of artistry, for lack of a better word, but I think it fits here. Of what Shakur does in there, man, and how difficult it is. Obviously, casual fans and sometimes even the diehards are a little bit thick-headed sometimes, and they're just they want to be wowed by blood and knockdowns and all this stuff. But what Shakur does, though, man, and I try to get this across to people is it is an art. It's the art of boxing, and its very core. Floyd used to say it all the time. It's about hitting and not getting hit.
Yes, but defense is defense since the dawn of time have always has a problem getting respect on the level of fighting, because the fans want blood. They don't understand the artistry of making people miss. They don't know that's a thing. Like they know punching in the face is a thing. Man falls down, man bleeding. They know all of that, and that's the people want blood and guts. Like
they do. I know. Sick society we are.
They don't want defense, and that's why Shakur, just like Mayweather. Like I still have conversations about Mayweather, and people say, "Oh, he ran." I said, "How do you run in the ring? Like you do know, like you can't. Like what do you mean running? Like he can't go nowhere. He can't leave the ring. Like So, but that's the mind state, is stand in front of him and just like beat the shit out of each other, so we all can watch somebody die and go home happy. You know what I'm saying? But that's.
And then what about people who come to the martial arts a lot of times? Is this suited for people who want to come to a martial art and get any health or physical benefits?
Oh, definitely. Like the training of 52 blocks, the cardio, the coordination of moving your body in those ways of moving the arms and releasing the tension in the shoulder. I think one of the things about 52 is it makes you think. It's a crafty style. So you learn to think inside the fight, something that's very hard to do as an offensive fighter. A lot of the times you may just go on with your, throw them hooks, uppercuts, and let them go. But defense takes thought, and I like that about it, that it makes you have to think within the fight to set up traps. And you can see people like, the Keyshawn and Shakur and all of them doing that. They're in there thinking. They're not on autopilot. Like most people, when the fight goes, they go straight to autopilot.
Right. And now when you say thinking there, I'm curious about the mental component, because obviously like we hear a lot about like a lot of the Asian martial arts are all about controlling your breathing, but it's also like a mindset. It builds a discipline, in the mind. But I think most people's, I think you said it a couple minutes ago, most people's instant reaction is throw their hands up or to turn and run from a confrontation. By nature, I think the fight or flight, it seems like a lot of times, if the flight is an option, people want to take that way out. And I don't think people really want to be in a confrontation. Boxers have even come on here and said, but before fights, they're like any other person. They feel fear, they feel anxiety. Harnessing that and using it and still being able to keep your body loose. Is there a mental component to 52 blocks? How to get past those barriers? Is there a mental training involved?
Well,
because it is difficult to fight another human being. Most of us will go to great lengths to avoid that if at all possible.
Yes. Well, I think the training of 52 and learning your defense, you get used to things coming at you.
Yes.
You get used to being somebody trying to hit you, and it becomes comfortable. It goes from a fear to like, oh, this ain't that bad. And then you learn how to take a punch.
Well, I started to realize that in my own training too, and I don't have a background, per se, just training on my own or whatever. But I started to realize that a couple of my as I've gotten older now, I'm really digging into what you're saying, because I'm starting to notice now that I'm gaining a more of appreciation for it. I was probably one of those, thick-skulled people back in the day who wanted to see blood and guts. But now, I love my slip ball, and I love that I put this thing on my head that has the elastic cord, and you punch the ball. I love the idea of things coming back at me, because I think people get into a fight and they think, geez, I'm going to unload on this guy. But they never think, you know what? He's going to be trying to unload on me and stuff's going to be coming back at me.
Yes, I've been doing reaction videos to people who train like that. And I've made the martial art world pretty mad at me because I'm exposing the flaws that you don't get 18 moves to his one move.
Right.
That's not how a fight works. And if you sparred, you would know that. Like, you don't, that's just not how it works. It's a give and take. And to me, defense is respect for your opponent. Having defense is saying that your opponent wants to win too, right? Even if he's the bad guy, he still wants to win. So I think defense is so necessary to any fight, to be able to have that ability. Because like I said, it gives you the ability to think. It gives you the, like, I think one of the greatest examples of defense is I seen Burt Sugar when he was doing the interview with Thomas the Hitman Hearns and Sugar Ray Robinson.
Yeah.
And he was asking them, he said, yeah, so Sugar.
Hold on, you got froze there. We lost his connection there for a minute, but we will get him back on here. We're talking with Lyte Burly. And of course, you will see this on the episode where I text him and tell him to go out and pop back in. You know, we're at the mercy of the internet here, folks. This kind of shit happens, folks. Nothing we can do about it. Technical issues often arise, and we will get him back in here. And we are talking about a very fascinating subject right now. If people aren't familiar with 52 blocks, it is a martial art, and I will let Lyte pop back in and elaborate on it a little bit more. He has left the room, technical difficulties, but as he said, he is overseas right now in the UK doing a seminar. So that's good. Spreading his art and his knowledge around. So we will hear back from him. Hopefully we can get him back in here, man. A fascinating conversation about a fascinating art. I'm very intrigued by it. And while we're waiting for Lyte to get back in here again, you know, he certainly sheds a lot of light, and often he's right about that. Defense gets, you know, is often forced to take a back seat to offense. It does happen. It's unfortunate sometimes. And I think a lot of the boxing population does not truly appreciate what guys like Shakur Stevenson, people that you might call in the boxing world, use the vernacular, a defensive wizard, or, a mastermind at boxing defense. But, and those are usually the kind of guys, who will be like, oh, yeah, I'm not tuning into that fight. And people will knock Shakur for, the fact that, he's not, dropping his opponent 3 or 4 times in a fight, or he's not, he's not opening up his guy with tons of cuts and shedding all types of blood and battering his guy all over the ring. But let me tell you this though, 20 years from now, I'm just speculating here. 20 years from now, when Shakur is retired, man, he will still have his faculties. You know what I mean? There's nothing cool about taking repeated punishment to the head. There's lots of evidence out there to attest to how important defense is, because we see a lot of these guys that we love, that we cherish, that have given us loads of memories. But those memories came with a price, a heavy price for many of these guys. Because, and Lyte will be back in here in just a second. We will continue this fascinating conversation. I got a couple more things I'd like to ask him. And, man, I mean, first of all, it sounds like oh, there we go. We got you back, right?
Yeah, yes, sir. Pardon that.
Hey, that's all right, man. Believe me, man. I've been doing this podcast thing for so long, man, that I understand like technical. I tell people all the time, man. We're pretty much at the mercy of the internet gods here. You know what I mean? Like, something goes wrong, it goes wrong. But the only thing is, I can't be bothered with the editing. You know what I mean? So I leave all the hiccups and the mistakes in there. So like while you got bounced out, I just kept right on rattling along.
Oh, okay. There you go. Yeah, I like your style.
Yeah.
Let it run. Keep it rolling.
I'm 52 years old. There's no time to edit, man. Life is happening, man. We're not going to act like this didn't happen, man. We're recording it for posterity.
That's right. I love
100 years. 100 years from now, man, we'll be gone, and this fucking conversation will still be there.
It'll still be here, and that's the great thing about the internet. That is the great
now. One
thing.
of the points that I wanted to make, though, man, is that a lot of times, like, people oftentimes are skeptical about, entering into a contract or entering into, hey, I'm going to be your student, you're going to be my teacher, because they want to know that what they're taking is effective. You know what I mean? Like, obviously people all say, oh, if you want to defend yourself, Kung Fu is the way to go. But then, the karate guy will say, no, well, my art is more effective.
Yes.
The judo guy might say his is more effective, man. So like, what puts 52 blocks, if you could sum it all up, you said a lot of great stuff, and it certainly pitched the art, extremely well. But, if I'm sitting there and I'm thumbing through the internet, I was going to say the phone book. That makes me seem really old. If you're thumbing along and you're saying, geez, you know what? I want to get into the martial arts, man. What would be your selling point to say, hey, don't discount 52 blocks?
I think the biggest selling point is defense. I think I always tell my students, fight like you love yourself. We're not suicide bombers.
Yeah,
we don't kamikaze. We're not killing ourselves to kill him.
Right.
Fight like you love yourself, and I think that's the use of defense. When you use defense, you don't fight like a martyr. You fight like somebody that's trying to go home.
Right.
I think any person with the same mind who would turn away from making sure you take least damage. Now, I'm not saying 52 is going to stop all damage. You can't swim without getting wet. But at least you can minimize the damage taken in. Right. So you can launch a good offense.
And in that time that you were just out of the room there, I was making that same point, because I was saying, people might bash, Shakur's style and say, oh, I'm yawning, this is a boring fight or whatever. But 20 years from now, Shakur will still have his faculties, though. I mean? Like, why take all that punishment? Because we do see a lot of boxers, we cherish these guys. These warriors have given us great memories, but they've come with a price.
Yes. No, before the phones froze, that's the story I was trying to tell with Bert Sugar. He was asking Sugar Ray Leonard, so what were you feeling when you was fighting Thomas? And he was like, oh man, I was feeling good. Thomas is a dangerous man, but I came to do what I do. And then Bert went to Thomas and said, Thomas, what was you doing? And he said,
yeah, you're right.
And he was the hit man. He was the man of offense. Right. Leonard was the man of defense. Years down the line, guess who could still talk?
Right. I know, like, we're seeing the effects on these guys that we, and that's not taking anything away from like all the memories that they gave us or whatever, man. But they're in there, like, shedding blood for us. You know what I mean? And I don't necessarily think it's admirable, to go in there and slug it out. Like another guy that I love, he's on my poster back there, Arturo Gatti. The late great Arturo Gatti. But he was the blood and guts warrior. Yeah. But that's the point. They were all bloody wars.
Yes, and they catch up to you, and you can sacrifice. And crowd friendly fighters are good, but like the sacrifice, they pay a high price for that. Like all of those wars that they've been into. So like with Thomas, you take nothing away from Thomas, but when your thing is offense and not like, I have a thing with people that always say something about street fighting. They said, well, ring fighting is different, like, because in the street fight you can die. I said, do you know pro fighters die? And
absolutely.
And guess what's different about them from the guys that die on the street? They sign up to do that crazy shit.
Yeah, they're willingly in there doing it.
They're willingly going into their death. You only fighting on the streets because someone tried to do something to you. You're forced into that. Yeah. These guys wake up and choose violence. They're different breeds, and they need that respect. That I don't call no fighter that steps in the ring a bum, because I know
me
he's
neither.
putting on the line.
I've gone on record on here. I used to co-host the show. The first 160 episodes I co-hosted with my son, who obviously, he's got 4 small children. It's tough for him to make a lot of the episodes with time constraints or whatever. But we used to say that all the time, man. Anybody that climbs through those ropes is not a bum. I don't care. I don't care if he's lost every single fight he's ever stepped in there. The fact that he's stepping in there makes him a warrior.
Yes, and that waiver he signed, because I signed waivers as an amateur fighter. Sure. And the waiver said, you are acknowledging that you can die in this thing, and you relieve us of all responsibility. That's what the waiver says.
Right.
So any man who signs that waiver is not a bum.
Now, obviously, you chose the path that you chose, but in your early days, like what, do you have a fighting background? Did you flirt with being a pro, a fighter?
Yeah, I did Late Thai, did a lot of MMA fights. I went out for boxing, but when I went for the Golden Gloves, I was sick and they picked it up. I had tuberculosis and they picked it up.
Okay.
And that disqualified me from.
Oh, I'm a nurse by day. That's my day job. So I know tuberculosis is no joke,
Yeah,
especially if you're going to box because it really saps your lungs.
exactly. So they, that was it from me. But the MMA crowd didn't care. The MMA doctors didn't look as deep as the boxing doctors. So I just jumped into MMA and competed in Lay Thai. I did Kung Fu tournaments, Wong Fei Hong. I did the Wing Chun. I did the free fight, and I did Lay Thai, which is pretty much you fight on an elevated platform. And you get more points. Like where Kung Lee came from. I think he did Lay Thai, then he did Sandar. I was doing that same route.
And now obviously, as I mentioned earlier, 52 blocks, I mean, being kind of like a niche thing where you really have to look for it or whatever. Mm-hmm. If people want to do it, I mean, obviously they can't just, I'm sure every town and city doesn't have a 52 block school.
Not yet.
If anybody's into it, I mean, what's the best avenue to explore?
Well, right now I got 2 online courses. One of my online courses is probably the biggest, one of the best courses on 52, 500 lessons. I think there's about 400 people signed up to it. I got CT Fletcher. I got, great signed up to it. And I have another one that's advanced.lyteburly.com. And right now I'm in the process of trying to open it up. That's in the UK. My partners out here has a school and we're doing the 52 block thing out here in the UK. So we're trying to make it more available now because I think the first step to it was kind of to build it up and show people that it's credible. Now that that's kind of out the way, now it's like, let's open some schools. And my partner here, he's got a school out here in the UK where, he's going to be teaching 52 blocks. And I plan to open one in Georgia and New York. And hopefully once it's done, maybe people will catch on. And, if Wing Chun can do it, I don't see why 52 blocks can't do it.
And so what's the best avenue as far as like a specific website? You know what I mean? Like promo the website for it.
LyteBurly.com. Yeah.
Okay, because you said there was 2 sites or 2 different places to go to.
Yeah, it's 2 online courses. When you go to my website, the online course, the big one is on there. So all you got to do is click the link. But I have another one, advanced.lyteburly.com, which I started because there were some fighters that were like, we don't want to go all the way back to the beginning. We've been fighting and we want to add it. Is there a quicker way? And I said, well, I'm going to do an advanced for advanced fighters that already, your jabs, your wrestling, and you just trying to add it to your thing. So advanced.lyteburly.com is where where you can do that. My other course is more for like beginners that may have had no martial art background, just starting out, and they want to learn this art.
And so the advanced one, completely bypasses basic stuff, or is it still included in there?
Well, it's hard for me to teach without fundamentals. So they come up, they come up, but I teach it as fundamentals you should already know. Like balance and how to shift your weight in your legs and certain things like that. I but I still have to go over it to teach the art because we don't use a flat foot fighting style. We use what I call the kickstand balance, which is you're pretty much balancing yourself in one leg and lead. So it's like a heavier leg, a light leg. So that way when you switch, you're switching in your legs, not in your head and your body's like your actual legs. I teach them how to switch into. So that becomes a fundamental that can be used for kicking, punching, wrestling. And I think that was one of my biggest breakthroughs with 52 was understanding that the clever what footwork is meant to 52. Like forget the blocks. I think
when people hear 52 blocks though, and then they hear the other vernacular, dirty boxing or whatever. They're not sure where the feet come into play. Is there a lot of kicking taught?
No. Like when I came up, kicking was like for girls. Like they went.
I'm kind of that old school mentality.
Yeah. No kicking or wrestling. They didn't let you do that. But like I said, with the fundamentals that I teach, a wrestler can learn 52 blocks. Like I teach wrestlers. A kicker can learn a punch because I think that's the greatest thing is that it can be paired almost with any offense. Fighting and you can't go wrong with that. It's like sword and shield. A lot of people have swords, but not enough shields.
And I got to say, as far as martial arts go, from what you're describing, like one of the big selling points, and I remember this even from a kid, was that they would kind of like, if you wanted your kids to join a martial arts class, it was kind of like them kind of advertising to the parents, not only is he going to learn physical stuff, but he'll do better in school. He'll learn self-discipline. He'll learn, to have patience and everything. But it sounds like this art, would probably be, even an even greater asset in that respect, because I imagine if it's defensive based, a lot of kids, I think, come into a martial arts class and they want to be Bruce Lee in the first week. But they want all the flashy shit up front or whatever. Yeah. So I imagine, it takes a lot of like patience to eventually get to the meat and potatoes of this art.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think like for women and children, it's a better art. Like I did a seminar in Chicago, Chicago PD, and they said, well, we called you out here because, we looked at Muay Thai and Wing Chun, and we can't break necks. Like we can't go out here.
Right.
He said, but your style is all defense. It's about us not moving out the way, and we want that. So I ended up teaching, and then that's when I came up with the idea of like the art of non-fighting. Like not every kid is Mike Tyson. Not every kid, like what people understand, like offense doesn't fit everybody. Not everybody's a stone cold killer. Some people do need to duck, slip, and run. And not stick in the fight. So I think defense covers a way broader group of people than the offense, and so like it's almost like a mandatory to add to your list.
And now what about somebody who might say, here we are in 2025, the 21st century. It is a crazy world. There are a lot of people going around with weapons. How effective can this be? Now, obviously, someone pulls a gun on you and shoots you. It doesn't matter what martial arts you're kind of screwed. You know what I mean? Yeah. But, even if we think of somebody with a club, a knife, anything like that, when you say defensive, I want to put at ease people that might say, all right, well, what if somebody pulls something on me, man? Am I shit out of luck if I know this?
Well, I think this is where we can bring up an aspect of 52 that I don't really bring up too much.
Okay.
It's jail appearance. It's survived knives.
Yeah.
That's all that they have in there. And there were 52 block fighters in there. One of the most famous being Mother Dare, who was a gay man. And there's a lot of different stories about, was he a predator or was he somebody that protected himself? But he was one of the people that was known in jail to catch knives, disarm men, and all types of stuff with his use of 52. So I don't think too many styles are ready for a weapon. But if your ability is to move out the way, I think that would be good dealing with somebody with a knife.
And I've also seen some of your videos. I also seen some of your videos too. And I'm certainly not an expert, and I'll do my best to mimic the moves. But even like the skull and crossbones, if you're coming in behind that, I suppose getting sliced on your arms and getting superficial cuts is a much better alternative.
It's the same way with punching. Like people, like one guy said, well, like you're still getting hit. I was like, yeah, I'll take it on the forearm than the face any day. Same thing with the knife. I'll take the cut on the arm than the neck or the face any day. And that's kind of like that thing is like you're sacrificing what you're willing to put in the way between you and your attacker. So and
plus you're using a lot of the hard parts of the body. Like I noticed from the stuff that I've watched, man, the elbows come into play a lot, and the elbows are criminally underrated for like how much damage they can do.
Big time. And where as an elbow, as like I think the elbow style comes as like a byproduct, but I believe we are the best. We have the best elbow system on the planet. I
believe on one of your websites there was like a picture actually, like on your website of a guy punching you, and you catching it on the elbow. And I can imagine that a bare knuckle guy, that would suck.
That would suck big time. Like like kickers have made a mistake kicking the elbow and injuring their leg. So the elbow as it becomes more fluency. If you look at something like Muay Thai, who uses their elbows well, no knock on Muay Thai, but they're very stiff. It's when you think of 52, you think of more of a free-flowing, fluid elbow. Yeah. And I think that's where our elbows differentiate and are better than Muay Thai because they're more fluent. So you're not thinking of this thing like someone grabbing you. When you doing this, you going into that move, you've already hit them twice. Yeah. And
I've often thought at the age of 52, and I've had a couple of surgeries on my lower back, but I'm I'm obsessed with just combat sports and all that stuff, and I really want to get into something, and I've really been focusing a lot on the 52, but it was either that or because I have a hard time with high impact stuff, it was either that or Tai Chi, like something that's a little more like relaxing. But I also see that you have some sites, I think it was on the Global Martial Arts page there, where you also do some stuff with the internal arts.
Oh, yes. Well, my teacher, Wilson Pitts, he was the one that actually told me to put a DVD out on 52 blocks. He said, he said in the Philadelphia gyms, they called it wall boxing, where they would put you against the wall and you would just defend, work on slipping without moving backwards, only going sideways to take away your retreating. And he said Georgie Benton, he would watch Georgie Benton do that all day. He said Georgie Benton would keep you in the mirror for 2 hours just working on slipping and how to get offline and stuff like that, where the defense was big. So he also encouraged us to learn Tai Chi and other arts that he taught, which was Tai Chi, Shin Yi. And then my teacher, his student was my first teacher, was Roberto Sharp, and he was more Kung Fu, related. So we learned Wing Chun and all that stuff. But the good thing about them is that my head teacher would tell me, he was like, there's no use of learning Kung Fu if you don't learn the rational art. He said, Kung Fu is intuitive. Boxing is like rational. He said you need both of them. But he said the rational can stand by itself, the intuitive cannot. You have to know a rational to use an intuitive art, like like a boxing and a Tai Chi together type of thing. Because the intuitive art won't be as they're striking. It's kind of like concepts and theories and philosophies and breathing and all that other stuff that does go into the fight. Like it is part of the fight. So that's how he taught us the other arts and stuff like that. And I've always kind of been interested in other arts. Like I've done Muay Thai, I do wrestling, I do other stuff besides boxing, just because I like martial arts. But I do believe a lot of my Kung Fu came from my head teacher, because that's just because he also believed boxing is a fire art, so you had to learn Tai Chi, because he said you'll walk around with your ass on your shoulders thinking you're ready to fight everybody. So he kind of used it as a balancing thing.
I'm pretty sure, Lyte, that you may have just sold me, and you might have just gained another student here. And
thank you.
And now you think though, man, like I am on my feet all day. As I said, I am a nurse. I work in a nursing home, so it's not like I'm some guy that's sitting here all crippled up. But I have had 2 lower back surgeries. But so the thing I like about it most is it doesn't seem to be demanding a lot of high impact stuff and a lot of crazy kicking and spinning and turning and this kind of thing. You know what I mean?
It's kind of just like
that was pretty much why I was looking at that in Tai Chi. You know what I mean? Like the movements seem to be something that at this stage of my life I can accomplish.
Yes. No, I definitely believe that with 52 blocks, because like I said, the footwork, a lot of those things don't take, like you're doing 100 squats or anything like that. It's kind of like just relearning your body. Like I tell people, 52 is probably 80% footwork, 20% block and hand feints. Like you have to really understand the intelligence of your feet, because there's an intelligence, and when you open it up, it opens up a lot of things.
And I think with you putting the emphasis on the footwork, on the feints, I think this art adds a good layer of deception in a good way. I mean, because I think deception is very important, and I think this would probably give you a serious advantage when you are outsized. I think a lot of people worry about running into the guy who's 280 pounds at the bar who you bump into, and he's the guy that wants to take you outside.
Yes. And the motto that my teacher always taught me was make them miss, make them pay. And
right.
Yeah, when you make them miss and make them pay, it's a whole, like, you punch me in the face, I punch you in the face is a 2 different thing when I make you miss and hit you.
Right.
Because now in your mind, it's like, I can't hit him, but he can hit me.
Right.
That starts the unraveling of the mind and of the fighters. So I think that's the motto, even if you had to be in the street fight. And a lot of people are like, well, the street fight maybe only 30 seconds. Well, it's still, you got time in there to be defensive.
Oh, yeah.
You got time to block. You got time to move offline and throw a punch. And, because like I said, defense goes so deep that people see it as just like, and when you look at Shakur, he doesn't do none of that.
Right.
The core is not, but he's still making you miss. But then
He's
you
right
see
in front of
somebody,
you making you miss.
yeah. Then
Yes.
you see somebody like a Pernell Whitaker who is on like this big defensive game. But I say that to say it's just that's how big defense is. It doesn't have to be seen for it to be happening. Like,
and you know what to tell you, to tell you the truth, man, if I'm running into a guy in the street and he starts doing that, I'm in my head like, this guy obviously looks like he knows what the fuck he's doing.
Yes.
Yeah. You know what I mean? That's disheartening right from the jump, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Because most people, like you see, like I think get hit by the sucker punch because, you know, when people go into a street fight, head movement goes out the window. You know what I mean? Like, you know, angles, all that stuff goes out the window. It's just force meeting force and haymakers a lot of the time. You know, it is.
Exactly. And that's where, you know, like I tell all my head teacher used to tell me, he said, you know who fights like people who don't know how to.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Because us in the know, we'll cross the street, we'll walk, you know, we'll de-escalate, another defensive word. We have de-escalation because we know what we can do. So, you know, that's, you know, most people fighting don't know how to fight and they're not going to train to fight. And that's when it becomes an emotional thing of like, just engage. You know, there's no science behind it.
Right. Okay, so we got lyteburly.com out there. So if people are like in the area that you do, so I mean, can they physically go to a school?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Unity. Right now, where I'm at Unity Training Center in San Antonio, Texas. I taught there, and
so you're not a New York guy anymore?
No, not for right now. But I will be going back to New York. I decided I wanted to leave New York because I felt like it was a comfortable zone. And how could I test myself in a comfortable zone? So I left, and I've been in many gyms, Dallas and Georgia. So I've been able to test myself with different fighters, and that's really what I wanted. So I will be returning back to New York.
And now you mentioned, you know, popping into different gyms, popping into the Mayweather gym or whatever. You know, like when you demonstrate your stuff or when you bounce these theories off of boxers, how is it received?
Most of it, and people in the know, they receive it very well. But sometimes, like I remember when I started off with Gleason's and I was going to get my boxing, my coach's license. So he's asking everybody in the class what they do. And I was like, I teach 52 blocks. And he said, oh, 52 bullshit. And I was like, oh, like, maybe that's the version you seen, but that's not the version I teach. And he said, well, you get a fight, all you're going to do is get somebody hurt. You get in the ring with that, they're going to get hurt. And I was like, well, let's see. And so I went and got my fight in. We won the Golden Gloves. And beat everybody up. So.
Well, I mean, you know, it's a famous story, obviously, you know, when Bruce Lee showed up at that convention and tried to insist that he could do the 1-inch punch or whatever. And everybody was booing him and saying, oh, this guy's full of shit. You know what I mean? You know, the proof is in the pudding, obviously, you know?
Well, you know, with fighting, it's funny because, you know, some of the old guards don't want to hear new information.
Right. Yeah.
You
stuck
know,
in their ways.
They you know, and they kind of clog up the lane of new ideas. And but most of the people I've met, sort of like you, that know boxing and boxing, if they're in the know, they once I say defense, it's like who can turn away from it? Like most people, like, and then I give them a better understanding of 52, and when they hear it, they say, oh, that's what it is, and they understand it more. You know,
and I want to say that I do believe that defense, you know, doesn't just win fights though, but I believe it spills over into every sport. I always believe that the team that wins the Super Bowl is usually the better defensive team. That wins the NBA Finals. You know what I mean? The teams that succeed, you know, and you even hear basketball coaches or football coaches, you know what I mean? Like when they're asked, you know, during halftime, hey, coach, what do you got to do in the second half? What do you got to do? It's always, you know, we got to play better defense. We got to close out. We got to get out. We got to get out to the shooters. You know what I mean? We got to get a hand up in their face. You know what I mean? So I think defense is a staple in any athletic endeavor you're doing.
It has to be, because when you get to the top level, everybody's shooting. Everybody's shooting. So what's going to separate you from him? Can you stop or block some of his shots? Can you prevent some of his shots so you get the lead? That's always like the only thing about boxing is the only sport where nobody starts chanting, "Let's go defense, let's go." And I've always wondered why. It's like, why we can't get it? It's because
usually that chant's not going to break out at a UFC event.
No, because they want you to die in there. They don't want to see defense. They want all offense. Blood.
Yeah, and so in closing, before I let you out of here, how does 52 blocks keep carrying on generation after generation in terms of like, if people got into this, how far do they have to go, and who would they go to if they themselves wanted to be an accredited teacher and spread the art around?
Well, on my online course, the first one is 500 lessons. After all 500 lessons, you can take a test with me. I fly out to where you at. Like, one of my students was in Denmark, and he said, well, you said if I did all 500 lessons, you fly out. And I flew out to Denmark and tested them. And so there's that route. So we have now, because it's so long, I have a lot of more young men that's been working with it. And like one of my students, he's teaching in Brooklyn. Like, a lot of my students are teaching right now. Like, so I think that was it. Or I think someone just had to, get the fire started. And now I think, 52 Blocks has legs now. Like, it's his own universe. Like, I go in there and read stuff like, wow, I didn't even know that, So it's like, I think it's already happening. I think like I said, one of the biggest thing I pat myself on the back is that I helped resuscitate it. And I think it's here to stay now. I think, the momentum is catching, especially today and in this moment. 52 is really starting to catch more attention from even people such as yourself that are looking down like, hey, what is this? Let me see what this is about. And I've done like two interviews not too long ago. So I think, like, I just feel like right now is our moment. I just feel this is our moment. And I think going forward, I want to also show what it can look like on the silver screen. I think 52 can look, because we see movies, everything has to be kung fu when it comes to a fight scene. And I think 52 can merge up in there to say, like, what if he's just an American that never went to China? Like, Like, could he still be the ass kicker of the movie? And I think 52 could fill that void and fill that gap. So I'm about to do a documentary on it where I think that's what it needs now.
Awesome.
Where I'm going to show from boxing and I traced it. I found the fights, with Jersey Joe Walcott doing the cakewalk. And when you hear these names, that's how black fighters are. Even in the hood, we give each other's names. Hey, that's black, So even back then, the armadillo, the cakewalk, it still was like the names of 52 Blocks today, which is like Skull and Bones. We're still doing the same thing. I want to trace it all the way down and connected to where it was really connected. So the boxing part was the science. Where did the fancy side of 52 come in from? Up rocking. If you ever seen an up rock battle, it looks like a 52 battle with no fights, with no punches.
Right.
And they're standing right in front of each other. So I'm going to show the connection that it has to hip hop, which I think is a big thing to show. Like, it's pretty much the sixth element of hip hop,
and I think that'll draw the more prospective students. Now I want to ask you. Obviously, people train and have the ability to train, or a certain amount of time on their hands that that they can give to training every day. But standardly, though, again, getting back to the teaching thing, if you did want to see this all the way through, like, what would be the timeline for when you could consider yourself proficient? Like, obviously, people can say, oh, you can have a black belt in 3 years in karate, or this or that or whatever. I know it varies, but ballpark, if someone was putting in a good, let's say we start with like an hour a day of it.
I would say 6 months to a year.
Okay.
Easy. Because once again, defense is in you. Like, this is not something we have to recreate. Like, teaching you how to punch, we got to recreate the wheel.
Right. Well, I think that makes people feel better too, because people don't don't say, okay, I this guy's got to take my money for 4 fucking years before before.
No. I think that's like, they do that with the other arts. They can stretch you along for 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, defense, absolutely. 6 months to a year, you'll have all of the fundamentals to train on your own. Like, I got a guy now that I'm doing FaceTime teaching with, and we've been at about 4 months, and he's getting there. He understands, it's happening because defense is so relatable to who you are, that if it's always on you. If you put in the time, you can cut the time down to anything.
Oh yeah.
If you put in the time, I would say, really working, 6 months to a year, you'll be sufficient. After that, then you start going into excellence and expertise. And
right.
That.
Well, Lyte, I think you're going to be flying in and making me a teacher soon. I'm into it. Man, I'm really into it. I'm excited.
I'm so ready for it. Let's do it.
I'm excited. I'm excited. After my interviews today, I'm going to peruse. I'm going to check out the online stuff. Now, can you do the online course either on a computer or smartphone?
Yes, you can. And for this interview and who you are, I want to give you my direct line. Let's do some FaceTime classes. I would love to work with you. Yeah. And get it out there. Like, you have a great base. You got Keyshawn Davis on the line.
I've had him on. Me and my son started this podcast, and we built it. It's one of those things nowadays. I'm sure you can relate to this. Everybody now with a computer or a microphone fancies themselves a podcaster.
Exactly.
So there's 8 billion podcasts out there. Now, there might not be 8 billion boxing podcasts, but there's always competition, and people only have so many hours of the day and so many hours that that they're going to watch you or what you're doing or whatever. But I'm proud to say, like, without buying subscribers or coercing anybody, I'm getting in the ballpark of 1,000 loyal subscribers. I'm up over 100,000 views or whatever. I've had some great names on here. I've left a good rapport with all the fighters, so they're all welcome to come back.
Come back. That's right. Excellent.
Yeah.
I can tell by your interviewing style and the comfortability of it is that you're good at like there's a lot of boxing channels, but a lot of them don't know boxing.
Yeah,
kind of just jumping on like they're like casual,
you're right,
like you said, with a camera and a microphone. It's always good to get on there with somebody that I can say a name like Archie Moore and they're not confused. Even people that ask me like, Lyte Burly, where'd you get your name from? It's like from Charlie Burly. I was a big fan of
I wasn't
Charlie.
around in the Archie Moore days and not actively watching boxing though. You got to dig into the crates and learn your history. Yeah,
you got. My teacher would tell me. That's why I salute to Wilson Pitts. Thank you for everything you've done.
Yeah.
But his thing to me was, you can't talk to me about boxing until you watch 4,000 hours of old footage. He said, then we can talk about boxing.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I went back and I watched all of the Willie Peps and everything. And now me and him can have a conversation. So
that's the greatest defensive fighter that ever lived, arguably. Willie Peps.
Especially the footwork.
Only guy to ever win a round and not throw a punch.
Especially to me. And that's with like the different levels of footwork. Like Willie's defense was really his feet. Like he could duck and all that, but the magic was in his feet.
Yeah,
he was amazing with it. And like I think one of the greatest things was like trying to hit Willie Pep was like trying to catch moonbeams in a jar.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
and I think so that's the level of defense that people can understand. Like. Because people see me moving around and I tell them, like, you don't have to move around as much as me. That's just me. I'm a counter puncher.
Right.
You could be aggressive. Like, I have a friend Ian that I taught 52. He kind of like walks you down with it.
Right.
So it still fits who you are. You don't have to be a man moving all over the place to be defensive. You just need to understand
you can make it your own
positioning, footwork, the fundamentals, and you can have a go at it. And I think this is where karate blocks went wrong. Like they had the blocks, but not the footwork.
Right. Well, after we're done here, I'll text you my phone number, man.
Yes,
and let's
please do.
Let's definitely stay in touch. And as things get going, man, you're a great guest. I'd love to have you back on.
Yes, let's do it. Let's do it.
I appreciate you doing it, man. I appreciate you doing it on such short notice. And I know there's a time difference or whatever, man. So you went out of your way. I appreciate it, man.
Listen, I'm glad I did it. Like something about the way you reached out said, no, I got to get this done now.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I did because this is a great connection for me.
Awesome conversation. I really appreciate it, Lyte, and really good luck with everything over in the UK, man.
Thank you. Thank you. Send me the number. We'll be talking again.
Will do. Good talking to you, my friend. All right. Later, brother. There he goes, folks. Lyte Burly. What can I say that he didn't say, man? Really, really, really descriptive, really informative on exactly what 52 blocks is, folks, and even fighters who might be watching this. Don't dispel this art. From what I've seen online, it is simple yet effective. And again, don't be put off by hearing the word defense, because as we say, it spills over into every sport, man. You have to be defensive minded. You got to be realistic in saying, I'm going to go into a fight and shots are going to be coming back at me. I'm not just going to walk in and be like, boom, okay, that's over with. No. He's thinking he's going to end it the exact same way, and his fists are going to be flying too, and anything else that might be flying. So Nothing wrong with defense, folks. And I mean, look, we mentioned some in there. Willie Pep, the great Floyd Mayweather, who wasn't defeated in his professional career. Vasily Lomachenko, who has elements of aggression, but I certainly would say his calling card is slickness, defense, footwork. Shakur Stevenson, we're seeing guys who are known as defensive fighters achieving a high level, a status that is up there with guys who are offensive minded, who want to go in there and just pound and walk straight forward and engage in a brawl. But in the long run, that is going to hurt you. It's going to hurt you mentally, physical injuries, the body will break down. So there is something to be said for a defensive minded art, and just a great informative conversation, man. That is Lyte Burly. Go check out lyteburly.com. As you heard him say, he will do virtual lessons. He will do online lessons. If you're in the Texas area, you could go and get in-person lessons. He's overseas, spreading the art to our combat fans over in the UK. So everything he's doing is just great, and I wish him a lot of success. I hope this art really takes off. And I wasn't just blowing smoke. I've been looking for something to occupy my spare time, something that isn't too high impact and physically demanding with my age and my back injuries. I sound like a fucking old man saying that, but that sounds like it's right up my alley. I haven't pulled the trigger yet, but I've been researching. I've been doing my homework on it, and I think that conversation really got me over the hump and really made me decide that it is something I want to explore. So thank you to Lyte Burly. Came in on short notice, folks. I had a cancellation, man, and he just stepped right in, man. Great conversation, man. As I said before, make sure to like and follow Off the Couch Boxing on Facebook. Stay tapped in to the most amazing and real boxing conversations anywhere on planet Earth. I can't speak on behalf of the other planets, but this planet, champions, legends, luminaries, fighters on the come up, and obviously guys who know a thing or two about fighting and who are teaching it to people out there. Lyte Burly, man. Great interview, man. Stay tapped in, and make sure to like, subscribe, and smash that notification bell. Stay tapped in. We are the champion, the undefeated, undisputed heavyweight champ of boxing podcast. And you know what I always say, if you want to be a champion, you got to roll with the champs. Peace.